Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you're joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Jeff and Yatindra, who will cover optimizing your SharePoint storage, strategies to control your Microsoft 365 costs and Copilot data quality. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar. Our handle is @ESPC_community, and our hashtag is #ESPC25. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, The End of Manual Work, How Low-Code Automation is Transforming Document Processing in Microsoft 365 with Clavin Fernandez, MVP. This webinar will take place Wednesday, 7th of May at 11 a.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Save, save, save. Book your EPPC 25 tickets before April 30th. Secure your best possible price. Don't miss your chance to be part of Europe's biggest Power Platform event, where you can connect with experts, gain practical skills in Copilot Studio, Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automate, and explore the future of AI-driven business solutions with Microsoft agents. Book now and make the most of this limited time offer. Scan the QR code to find out more and secure your spot today. Attend Europe's premier Microsoft 365 and AI conference, ESPC 25, taking place in Dublin from the 17th in December 2025. This is your opportunity to gain incredible insights and real-world inspiration from some of the top minds in the industry. Book your super early bird ticket today and save and secure your spot. You must attend this event. Scan the QR code to find out more. After the webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you will be notified by email when it's available. And so now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenters, Jeff and Yatindra. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, and hi everybody connecting. Hi Yatindra, so glad to be here. And yeah, today with Yatindra, we're going to discuss about SharePoint storage. I think a trending topic, knowing that a lot of companies only see their growth of storage continuing, especially since COVID and since M365 in general. So I'll introduce myself, then I let Yatindra, and yeah, and then the agenda. So I'm Jeff Angama, solution engineer for AvePoint. I work from France. Sorry about my accent. Let me know if you don't understand in the chat, or Yatindra will help me. I'm an MVP for M365 and for platform. I've been in this industry since 2011, SharePoint guy, Power Platform guy, and now working for AvePoint. Yatindra?
Thanks very much, Jeff. Hi, everyone. Great to see you virtually. My name is Yatindra Anpura. I work as a solutions architect. I've been in the ecosystem for close to 20 years in different roles in public, private sector organizations, mainly dealing with kind of the not only SharePoint, but also data and establishing good practices where people can thrive and collaborate really well. So looking to encourage some good practices today with Jeff and myself. Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, so before finding good practices and solution to this storage challenges, let's say, let's understand the challenges and why are we talking today about storage, basically.
And Jeff, you want to share your screen, if that's all right?
Okay, it's not shared?
Not yet, no.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. There you go.
Okay, now it's good.
Oh. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So back to the initial slide. So the agenda today is this one: understand the challenges, the solution, and what are the good practices to manage your storage. So challenges here. I'll let Yatindra introduce as well.
Yeah, thank you. Sure, thank you. These challenges from kind of one example that we came across recently, but there's multiple challenges out there The first one you see on the top left is around storage rapidly growing. Now, that challenge could be where people don't really understand what is the cause of that. And maybe they're getting a bill for storage, and they're now questioning, why is it so much? Why is it so big? That could be a really great starting point to really uncover and discover, as we'll go through this session today, what kinds of things may be making that up, what kinds of things kind of are the root cause of that storage growth. The second point is around M365 is open with no controls. Inconsistency, duplication of data in systems. And we've seen this in multiple kind of, I call it previous lives, where I've worked in different organizations. And I try to understand, why maybe there is no controls. Why do we keep things open? And maybe it's a question that people don't understand what security should be applied to certain areas, and maybe what areas should be relaxed. And maybe understanding the kinds of things that is looking at why things are created in a specific way, what kinds of purposes and definitions, classifications even are required. And a lot of organizations, especially in the ecosystem we're in now, they're tackling all these things head on, and not only are they involving those immediate teams, but also the wider, maybe security, compliance, are deeply involved into these sorts of challenges. The third one is around OneDrive and excessive sharing. And this is mainly around making sure that people understand the purpose of why you have OneDrive as opposed to SharePoint, and where should your published material be, where should drafts exist, and making sure that people leverage and surface the correct areas in terms of what that would be. So welcome back, Jeff. I'm guessing the connection is there.
Yeah, back. So yeah, those are some main challenges around data, not only the topic of today, not only storage, so that you get a full understanding of data challenges. Can I move forward?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So with Copilot, you might have noticed data is fueling, if I may say, Copilot. So if you ask something to Copilot and it knows this file 10 years ago, it's going to return you this result basically. So that could be another webinar, quality of data. Today we're going to really focus on storage, but you will see that there's potential connection between the two topics. If you clean your data, then you won't have this kind of answers. So what's the landscape in company? How is data structured, Yatindra?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and in this slide, I love the fact that it's an iceberg, because there's a lot of things that we see on the surface, right? We have strategic information. Maybe if myself and Jeff are in a team and we're working together, we will understand, what we're doing immediately. Maybe we'll also have some understanding of what is relevant, to the organization from a department perspective, maybe. So ROT stands for redundant, obsolete, and trivial. So I've been in the organization for close to 7 years, so I've got a lot of files which right now they may not be relevant. We might choose to remove them and maybe keep some relevant things that if we have a project, we can use that material that we found useful maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, but we don't really know what is under the surface. And so it's making sure that we not only understand, what is below the surface, how we can tackle that dark data and shine a light across that dark data, but also the numbers that you see, Jeff, on the right-hand side. Where are those numbers from in terms of percentages?
Yeah. So the strategic information, generally what you use on a daily basis as an employee, would be only 15% of data. And the rest could be rarity data, 33%. That could be maybe archived, deleted. And dark data is half of the content we don't know. Dark data. So could be from previous life 20 years ago from previous activity of the company. It could be wrongly copied to the environment. Well, dark data means we don't know.
Yeah, maybe a failed migration, or maybe someone did a lift and shift, right?
Yeah, we do see a lot of surprise, right? When you analyze data, some people put their entire computer to SharePoint, or they just use it as a YouTube, let's say, so with large video files, etc. Yeah, so some statistics. Data is always growing. We took these statistics of one megabyte per per second is created by human, and 60% of organization they manage 1 petabyte of data. So before I joined AvePoint, I didn't know what 1 petabyte meant. So I check it up. For if some people don't know, it's 1,000 terabyte. And we noticed that generally 500 gigabyte of data has not been changed for 5 years. So why do we leave this in a system, such a collaborative system like SharePoint or like Teams? So 50% of company will face data issue. So data quality, back to our example on Copilot. So that's slowing down their project for AI. Could be Copilot or any other project they are having with AI. So now we move to SharePoint side. If you don't know this report, I invite you to check it out. Whether you're a customer or partner, you can check the one of your customer and check the SharePoint usage. How much is the quota of the environment? That's the bottom part of this slide. Here is just 1 terabyte of quota. So that means there's only probably 100 licenses because each user gets 10 gigabyte. And then you can see the data growth that is constantly growing, sorry. You can check the last 6 months of data. So you can extrapolate to 1 year ahead, let's say. And data is generally a lot made of versions. So by default, there's 500 versions per document library. And you will see that there's a lot of versions that take space actually. So we accumulate a lot of data over years. And in general, remember that it's increasing like 30% per year. I don't know if you checked this number with other customers, but that's what I noticed, Yachindra, 30% per year in terms of data growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the growth challenge is one that where organizations are now thinking, okay, how do we tackle this when they're growing in that way? I think somewhere between 20 to 30% is a good average. But if there's a sharp, maybe you're an organization that acquires businesses, and now you've got loads of things that bump up that storage number. So this is a great way to get an understanding of what's there, how that growth is taking place, and where are the active areas potentially.
Yeah, so you might notice some spike like here. So that's a small test tenant, so plus two gigabyte, but sometimes customer migrate their file share to SharePoint, so they have like plus 10 terabyte suddenly. So if we talk about the version, I wanted also to share my feedback about customers. Generally, when they come to us, AvePoint, for example, they say, oh, my storage is super growing. What can you help with? And we can identify with our product that, for example, 33% of their storage is made out of versions. So if they get rid of those maybe 400 versions out of 500 for the existing data, they can save 33%, for example, more or less. And also we notice the ROT data is around 30%. So ROT again means duplicated data, obsolete data. For example, this file you have not modified for 5 years, this could fall in this ROT category. Or trivial category would be even some files we carried from file share after migration. For example, files without extension, temp folders, all those things can be straight away deleted. So that's part also of this potential 33%. So back to the iceberg earlier, if you were to clean or archive all those ROT data plus the version, you could potentially save 60% of your SharePoint quota. So yeah, maybe a word about quota. How is it calculated for everybody to understand, Yachindra?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've got two variants, and depending on how large the tenancy is typically going to be determining this. So I think we've got an example here where you've got 1,000 users. So if they're in a commercial environment or commercial tenant, as you see on the left, then you have an allowance per user and you also get a 1 terabyte allowance on the SharePoint side. So OneDrive, you will get 1 to 5 terabytes in terms of the OneDrive capacity, and you get then the quota that's an accumulation of that. The slightly difference is that if you're going for the education side, you get a larger allowance in terms of how much space you need. But we're getting a lot of conversations with education tenants where there is going to be charges that are going to be included in terms of previously there was a reduced charge, and now obviously you can see the numbers here in terms of the charges per month.
So in general, if you have some F3 license, this is not entitled to any quota. So you can just time 10 the number of your users. So for example, here 1,000 users, and it's like 1,000 gigabyte, so 1 terabyte, and then you add 1 terabyte, which is the tenant capacity. So that's your quota, and that's what you can check in the SharePoint administration to view this quota. So it was this one here. If you go to the top right of the list of the SharePoint site, you will see your quota and how much you have in progress. So if it's red in your case, or if it's approaching it based on the storage growth that you have, this is when it's a good time to take care of your data, and you are in the good webinar today to discuss about that. So if we discuss about the data, what's, as I mentioned earlier quickly, versions as well count in your quota count. Loop, anything you create in Loop, especially now Copilot can create Loop page, elaborate on it. You might have tried it, Yachindra. That's as well count on your storage. SharePoint embedded, if there's people in the room about that, when you create an app with SharePoint embedded, this is also counted in SharePoint quota. And I'm sure a lot of us here record a meeting. Once it's recorded, it's generally stored in either OneDrive or the Teams itself, if it's triggered from Teams. And after 90 days, it expires and gets deleted. But if you restore it, it's then back forever, not date anymore. And meetings could take a lot of space, especially with versioning. I noticed sometime for a customer, they were editing their meeting name to rename it afterwards. And from 200 megabyte video, the video switched to 10 gigabyte. So quite a
That's
lot
a huge.
Yeah. So imagine if you do that for every of your replay, that could take a lot of space. So yeah, that's the documentation about Microsoft saying that where is things stored in terms of Loop. So Loop store a lot of things actually, Copilot pages, Loop page, invitation, etc. So if you don't have any idea about your data, how is it consuming each SharePoint site, you can actually go to the SharePoint site itself and you can look at the data there. And if you have enabled preservation hold library for retention purpose, please know that if you delete something from the recycle bin, it will never get deleted. An example here, a customer activate this. Preservation hold library is for retention purpose, and it will keep everything forever. On top is purview retention label. The same concept apply, means that this cannot be deleted. So its specific file won't be able to be deleted and will count over your storage. So something to have in mind as well. So Loop, we already mentioned it. It counts as well about your quota. Yeah, anything to add about this, Yatindra?
Yeah, so I think Loop is an interesting one, and it's one that organizations are now starting to use quite a lot because you can obviously surface that in so many different areas. So I think it's a great way, but you've got to also keep in mind that the more that proliferates across the organization, the more storage that's going to take up. So just be aware of that, I guess. Was my only comment here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's counted is it's not only SharePoint, it's the SharePoint behind the Teams, the SharePoint alone, like the intranet, or even Loop is counted inside. So I like this analogy here, when your fridge is super full, it's hard to function, let's say. So for customers that reach their quota, it's also, I would say, an emergency, because potentially Microsoft can switch to read-only your collaboration, so you're not able to upload any more documents, and you have to rush buying more storage with Microsoft. So there's some grace period, of course, and what can happen is that you can still drop file actually in the system, but you cannot update it. So let's say you create a file, you start from 0, and the first time you write something, it's going to say it's not possible anymore, your quota has been reached. We did see some customer over quota for a few months, maybe some years, but that's rare case. So their grace period is super long in that case. And I also noticed some customer blocked from being able to collaborate. So quick word about challenges again that I mentioned. Please have in mind that Teams meeting default expiration time is 120 days. I say 90 earlier because actually at that point we changed it to 90. And yeah, 1 hour of meeting is about 400 megabytes according to Microsoft documentation. So just to illustrate earlier, an example, if I modify the Teams name or metadata, it will become, you see, every time you have a version, it's 200 megabytes that is counted. So just to illustrate my my example earlier.
If just to go into this in a little bit more detail, every single version has got the same size as the original. Is that right then? Every time you make a small change, that's going to then aggregate up and up and up and up. And we're going to see that huge iceberg get even bigger.
Yeah, I'm thinking on SharePoint on-premise, it was not the case. It was only calculating the difference, let's say, right, for a document, for example. But yeah, even for documents, that's what we notice. Every version is more or less the same size of the document. So I guess if you remove some pages, it's a bit lighter, but it's not only the difference that is captured. Yeah, good point. And Microsoft has changed a topic related to storage as well. Microsoft has changed the policies around the OneDrive. I don't know if you want to take this one, Yacindra.
Yeah, so this one, in terms of the changes that Microsoft have made, is that after the OneDrive has been unlicensed, so it means that the user within the organization has left, and there is no e-license attached to the individual. Then you will kind of lose that content. Am I correct there, Jeff, in terms of
Yeah. Yeah, previously you can configure some retention. Actually, they changed the date now to October to give customer more time, because previously you can configure potentially a 10 years retention to keep this OneDrive of this user leaving the company. But from October, I will change the date later, the OneDrive that the user that get the license removed potentially get deleted after 93 days. And if they have retention on, it will go to Microsoft Archive. And only if you don't set up the billing in Microsoft Archive, it will get deleted after 93 days. If you set up the billing, then it will be stored in Microsoft Archive for you to restore it in the future. But whenever it's in Microsoft Archive, meaning this 5 cents per gigabyte per month to store this OneDrive. And if you restore it, there's also a cost associated to that. So something to have in mind, especially around OneDrive. You have now until October to manage this. You can either back it up if you have a third-party product to back it up, or use MS Archive to restore it. Okay, enough of challenges about data. Now let's talk about solutions. So Microsoft has published some scripts, PowerShell scripts, if you want to analyze a specific site. So let's say you know your intranet is super huge, you have a lot of data inside. You can analyze and know the data inside in terms of versions, because they have released a way to optimize versions, Microsoft. So this way you might know the potential gain about these versioning settings. So let's say the limitation around that is that you have to analyze this for each site, so it can be quite tedious, but at least you get an understanding of a specific site, how much versions could you save potentially. And that's the native Microsoft capabilities, let's say. And then you have the community PNP scripts that maybe give you more understanding. It will analyze every site, SharePoint site that you target, and potentially tell you how much you could save for every of those sites. Maybe less detail in those specific sites, but at least you have an understanding about how much versions are taken in your system. And versions generally is the first step, because we saw that it's potentially 30% of your storage. So after that, you might want to archive your data, and yeah, wanted to give you some overview what you can do in terms of archiving. Yacindra, I leave you this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in here, I think there's an interesting one around not only version cleanup, but also looking at the different levels that you have. And I think it's a great starting point to look at where that storage is, how you want to approach it, and share that then with stakeholders in the kind of analysis that we've done. I think it's important to bring everyone on this journey. So making sure that you understand what kind of metrics you can bring into that conversation to then really empower the right decisions to be made. And looking at the data landscape, the e-discovery needs, maybe if it's something confidential, how long do you need to keep it for? And that may be why some organizations choose, say, legal hold and those kinds of things. But a lot of times when we get into this level of conversation, people quickly realize that it may be a case that it wasn't needed. And so you can then have some benefits realized there.
Yeah, and after you do this analysis, potentially with a third-party product like AvePoint, you also will understand what action can you take. Is this a specific site taking most of my storage? Is it because the data is not modified for 5 years? At least you understand your data landscape, let's say, and then you can take the right decision. So one of the way to archive with Microsoft, for example, is Microsoft C5 Archive. So that's from their website. So today you can archive an entire site, SharePoint site. So that require the entire site to be kind of inactive to your end user. And if they need to have access to that, the admin will have to restore it. They will have to ask the admin to do that. So it's, as I mentioned in the previous slide, this is stored in Azure. That's why it is quite fast to restore and archive. But I would say the downside of that is that maybe in a certain team or in a certain SharePoint site, you have a mix of active and inactive stuff. So in that way, you cannot archive everything. If I'm not wrong, SharePoint is not taking care here of the teams itself. So it means that if you archive the SharePoint and then you restore, the teams won't be restored after that, only the SharePoint side. So it's really maybe for the SharePoint side of things. That's what it is as per today in terms of product. And back to the policy change for OneDrive, this is where those OneDrive will be stored pending your action. Again, only if you activate the billing. So we do have some customers that evaluated Microsoft Archive. Here's some feedback. For information, you can find stuff in the e-discovery. But then if you want to really access the data, you have to restore those sites that were archived. So it's associated with a certain cost, the 60 cents per gigabyte. The second one is about the teams. It's not related to the team. So when it disappeared, teams is really ignored. And today the archiving is only available for the site level. You cannot say, I want to archive just one file. This is actually planned for global availability July 2026. So that's the solution. Yeah.
Just a question there, Jeff. So it means that if you've got large SharePoint site, different teams might be accessing that, everyone has to almost put things on hold while you perform this archive. So the granularity is quite important, because otherwise everyone has to almost work backwards once that restoration is done.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So maybe some example of how we do things with AvePoint. I'll leave you this one to you, Yacindra. ROT again. What is it? Because we know it's a new word for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. So redundant, obsolete, and trivial is content that we will not only analyze, but we can put some rules behind it. So we can understand if, for example, there's a duplication, or it's got many versions. And when we've done scanning through the AppPoint technology, we've come across organizations where the most redundant files are typically like a menu of the restaurant that is right next to the office. And everyone downloads these kinds of files, which are not that relevant. However, it's very convenient for you to download that off a website and be able to then reference that. However, if you accumulate that over maybe a 1,000 user business, it's going to be a fair amount of data that is not needed, and it then adds to that kind of iceberg analogy that we started off with in today's session. In terms of obsolete and trivial, so obsolete, no longer current, and we come across obsolete information quite a lot when you've either got project work or you've got things that you might have done a couple of years back. However, either because of trends and because of kind of where the organization is now, it typically won't be needed. So you can think of obsolete data in that way, where you can quite easily take that away. And trivial, the last one, is around content that is of low or zero value. And I think Jeff, you mentioned when we're doing wholesale migration, and we see system files. System files, no one is going to be able to use. And when we're doing these sorts of analysis, we come across all these weird extensions that no one can make head or tail of, because maybe it was created like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and there's no ownership or no kind of reference for those kinds of areas. So yeah, we come across these quite a lot, and they typically either, if it's important, we will have already kept it in a much better place, but these could be really good targets for you to trim.
Yeah, maybe I can show an example here. After we have done this analysis, we tell you that, okay, those videos has not been modified for 3 years, so they fall into the obsolete category. And those are made of MP4 mostly, but also zip file. And the goal is to get an understanding of your environment so that you can take the right decision, or maybe just engage a discussion with the business. Hey, why you have those videos since 5 years? Should we delete it, etc.? So you can really understand your data thanks to.
Absolutely, I think it's good to understand the patterns that are within organizations. And when we ran this for a university, one of the old lecturers was part of the team, and we also analyzed his OneDrive, for example. And he had content that said, yeah, you can delete that recording straight away. So there was immediate low-hanging fruit that can be derived from information like this that you can take action on straight away. And other ones, it may be that there is a reason why you've got so much of a particular rot category. So it really opens the doors to those conversations, and making sure that you involve the right people and the right contacts are defined.
Yep. So how to manage this this data growth, and because now we understand what the data is made of, but except for versioning, what can we do in terms of
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to start off from an end user perspective, because what we sometimes get is that yes, you have this kind of growth. You're going to start by removing things, but what about the things we need to keep? So this is just a kind of a quick walkthrough in terms of the kinds of capabilities that we've learned from customers, where they not only want to archive specific areas, but they want it easy for the end user. They don't have to do things where a ticket needs to be raised, and we want almost like a self-service methodology. So what you're seeing on the screen here is a portal that's been defined, and it covers SharePoint, groups, as well as teams. And when we are applying these rules on what to archive, we can make it simple enough for an end user to go in and be able to restore content themselves. The strategy around this is we want to make sure that we not only keep the content in an easy to focus manner, but also we put a stub in place. And that stub will capture all the metadata. It will also allow us to be able to search for that. So even if it's archived away, you can search for the file name, you can get the context around what that content was about. And once you then perform that search, you find the stub and you click on the file itself, what it will do is redirect you to the exactly like this, and you'll be able to click on the restore link. So it will tell you, what the rule is, where it's gone. Once you click on the restore icon, button, sorry, it will then restore that back within your area and directly in place, so you're able to then carry on as you were.
So that's a file level, right? Here.
Correct. This is a file level restore, and the advantage with this is you're not going out of your day-to-day job to perform this activity, and you also don't need to chase up a support team member or whoever an admin is that's performing this for you, and includes full fidelity as the in charge of it.
Yeah, and it's easier, as one earlier, if you have active and inactive data. Sorry, Yatindra, the network just cut a bit. Yeah, I mean that if you have one site only with active and inactive data, it's maybe complicated for you to archive everything. Here you are really granular on each file based on the age of the file, the size, etc.
Absolutely, and this normally forms part of the bigger plan, right? Where we can then not only look at what is good practice, but like you say, there's a mixture of active and inactive data. So not only are you making sure that if there is certain areas that we want to put in place, we can build onto that, but also making sure that the correct kinds of things are kind of put in the right context. So we keep only what we need, and we have a great methodology of looking at what terms are there, how people maybe classify things, and only relevant things are then have the right rules applied, which will mean that only they're going to be archived away, whereas everything else that's live would be kept from an end user perspective, and they can happily use those areas quite nicely.
So maybe some good practice in general to share for Data Pro.
Absolutely. And I think this is some of the things in terms of what we've discussed, is looking at automatically archiving content, and this comes from first of all getting an understanding of what makes up the organization that you're working on. How is the kind of storage rhythm? What are the kind of rules that we need to put in place? How long do we need to keep that for? Typically, you're going to be working with your data architects, and there's probably business policies that you have in place that refer to this. And I think we've mentioned that then flows into step 2 around identifying what is redundant, obsolete, trivial, looking at what kinds of things on there. But what are your thoughts on the archiving based on individual documents, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's a long-awaited as well feature from Microsoft Archive, and I think that's the way to go, because you could have active file in the same Teams or the same SharePoint, and setting different criteria to be able to archive or delete stuff, to me, is how we reduce the storage, and that's what we see with customer anyway. Version, again, is the first steps, and archiving is the second one. Because SharePoint Online is a highly collaborative system, right? And I guess the infrastructure behind is quite expensive. That is why you have extra storage and quota set by Microsoft. But my question is to people is, when you have a file that is not modified for 5 years, that you need to keep for legal reason, maybe the contract with a partner or whatever, the right place to store SharePoint Online. Because I think historically we had file server, and maybe we do still have file server, but it's quite easy for end user to move everything where it's convenient, which is Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc.
Absolutely. I think making sure that the policy is broad enough, right? Where we can make sure that if they're in those different places, not only can we make sure they're captured in the right way, but maybe we need a way of linking them together, which again is some capability that we bring to that conversation.
Yeah. I see we have a bit more time, so I wanted to show you as well Microsoft Archive. So yeah, I got some issue getting the language right on this, but I'm sure you're gonna recognize. So Microsoft Archive happened in SharePoint Admin Center. Here I have the list of my SharePoint sites. And once you have enabled the billing of Microsoft Archive with your Visa card, etc., you will have this button to archive a certain site. So this site archive, for example, that you should contact your administrator to reactivate it. Actually shows an error, but that's the message. And then if needed, you can restore this straight away. So that was my site archive, this one. Yeah.
Just a question on that. So if I'm, for example, I've been on PTO, right, and you've archived that site, yeah. There's no way for me to understand those kinds of things unless you send me some sort of comms around this, right? In terms of
a communication, or the user will see it from the message here straight away.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to inform your end user before that,
yes.
and inform them where is the site and etc. What's the name, and basically you're able to restore it under 7 days without any cost. And after 7 days, there's a cost associated. That's what it's saying here in French. So when you archive, it's quite fast for this size here, 6 megabyte. And then the admin will use the same way to restore it. So you have the view here in the archive site. So you have 2 here, and I can restore it straight away. So I think it will serve a purpose for certain scenarios, but not everything. That is when maybe you want to look at third parties to check what we can do on the on the file level. So I wanted to refresh this site just to show you now it's working. Yeah, so it's back live.
Brilliant. Wow.
Yeah, any questions so far? I'm checking the chat.
Yeah, there's 2 questions in. So the first question is, what effect does reducing versioning have on collaborating and co-authoring? What value should be recommended for versioning at tenant level, even though the default is 500?
You want to take this one, Yatindra, first?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. I would try and understand the reason for the number of versions, and it's not that I'm answering a question with a question, but I want to understand context. The reason why we ask these things is because sometimes there may be legitimate reasons. So in the previous place I used to work at, we had an Excel spreadsheet that was used across the UK, and you'd have different collaborators working on this. So we think about maybe per day you have about between 100 to 200 versions of just one Excel spreadsheet. The reason for that is they had different tabs, they would update it. All of this was stored on a single SharePoint site. I was the admin at the time, and we would have to ask them to clear up number of versions, and we'd have to go back in time for that. So depending on the business need, there may be a need to keep the full 500. However, I think there may also be some education that you can kind of also pass on to the key stakeholders there to help them put the right guardrails in place to say, if you've got a major version, then we only need X amount of major versions. Minor versions, again, you can define as well. But if they can kind of streamline that, and if that's the approach that you want to take, then that's the route that you want to encourage. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, it really depends on the business. Maybe for legal reason. Also, versioning could help to protect yourself against ransomware. I say could help because ransomware could be intelligent enough to to corrupt the 500 historical versions. So I see some company that has backup in place, for example, and they are okay to clean, to keep only 5 versions, for example, because they know that they have backup in place. And in terms of collaboration, I don't think anybody need more than 10 versions. Maybe in your example that you shared, it's really exceptional. But yeah, those are the 2 angles you can look at. Just know that the intelligent version cleaning of Microsoft could potentially reduce the version numbers to 1. So is this sufficient for your company? That's up to the customer, let's say.
Yeah, I would say when you're reducing versions, and as Jeff mentioned, I think making sure that there's a backup solution just in case before taking these kinds of actions would be really useful, just so you have that kind of stopgap in case you start removing loads of things that maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Perfect. So the next question there is, I believe Microsoft documentation mentions that it will keep all OneDrives that have retention, even if you do not have billing set up. You are just not able to restore this OneDrive until you do active billing.
Okay, that's more a comment. Actually, there is one case, I will double check here. There is one case where it gets deleted when you don't set billing. It's when the retention is by default, that no retention has been touched by customer. I mean, that's my understanding, and happy to clarify if we are wrong on this one.
Perfect.
So those were the 2 questions.
Yeah, so there's another question there is, how about site lifecycle management features in SharePoint Advanced Management? Is it coming free or require a premium license?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, here today we really talk about that level, but one of the good practices is yeah, to do lifecycle management as well, to ensure your SharePoint, your teams have a duration of life and who can create it and when do we get deleted. And yeah, SAM, the SharePoint Advanced Management module of Microsoft, comes with some features around that. And it's by if you don't have any Copilot license, it's a paid license, I know. But if you have Copilot license, I think recently they include SAM inside it. Submitted to double check this information, maybe it changed again, but my last info is this one, yeah. So basically it allows you to say any SharePoint inactive or Teams inactive, people will receive notification for them to maybe delete it. If they don't answer, it will delete the workspace. Yeah, Yatindra, anything to add?
No, absolutely. And I think the key things you could keep up to date in terms of the changing landscape around this, because I think when it was originally mentioned, there was some licensing aspects, but now, as you mentioned, if you've got a Copilot license, it is definitely part of the allowance that you have. But I think getting into the detail and the granular aspects is sometimes where we're hearing customers saying that it doesn't really get into the risk elements or the kinds of understanding that you want until you dive deeper into that granular aspect.
Perfect. Yeah, people are just asking, will they be able to get their presentation slides later? So, Jeff, would you be able to share them with me and then I can put them on the recording?
Yeah, of course. Gladly.
Perfect. So another question is, we have tried running version reduction scripts on some sites, but it does not seem to help much. What do you recommend if I say I'm reaching my storage quota soon?
Yeah, I observed personally, maybe Yatindra will share on that too, but some customers have only 10% of versions in terms of data representation. Some can have 50%. It's really depending on how collaborative are your users. And yeah, I would say run an analysis like with AvePoint product, so that we tell you what is your data made of. Is it made of video file? What's the age of the data, etc. And then look at archiving, because versioning is the first step you can do, but even with cleaning versions and correcting the 500 to maybe 100 number of version, we still see the growth continuing because people keep adding documents, larger files, etc. So look for archiving like we discussed today, for example.
Just to add on to what Jeff just mentioned, I think we get a number of organizations where there is huge growth, and tackling that and like, not only do we get the visibility, as Jeff showed earlier in terms of the ROT analysis that we can perform, but it also typically is part of a larger data strategy project, maybe, where you know, as we mentioned earlier, maybe you back up certain elements that you definitely want to keep, and it could also encompass into how long and what kind of tiered mechanisms you want before it's then defensively deleted. So having a good strategy around this and using tooling such as what SharePoint can provide typically is part of the strategy that we've been seeing from organizations.
Perfect. This next question there is, we changed SharePoint versioning setting to automatic on all our sites to all document and page libraries. Then we run trimming jobs to all sites, so versioning settings will affect to existing files. This is the key. Will these steps be we freed up 44% of used SharePoint storage?
Okay, somebody's sharing some
That's another
feedback here.
comment.
Yeah. So I guess so in this case, this customer might have a lot of versions. So the automatic versions for Microsoft worked, but bear in mind that sometimes if you're okay with that, yeah, proceed to clean. But if you have more need for granular number of version, maybe for certain department you want a certain number of versions due to compliance reason, that's what you want to do, maybe by script or off-point product. It's feasible. Yeah.
Well, one point to mention there, Jeff, sorry, is that when it runs, I don't think there's any kind of formulated time frame around this, and we sometimes get asked from customers like, can we run the archive on a specific day or things like that? And I think that's hard to do it when it's automatic. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, the performance as well is a bit random, so it's really a black box today. Yeah, but it did work for some customer to clean versions this way. Yeah.
Perfect. That's all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your interactions, and we remain available if you need more information. So to wrap up today, what you have seen, what you can do from today is check your SharePoint quota in the admin centers. You can go to Office 365 Admin Center, then you go to reports and you get this graph. You can see the last 6 months of storage, so you can extrapolate for the future. Then yeah, check your quota, what's your amount. If you have future migration as well, take this into account. And generally our customer, they start with ROT analysis because they want to understand after maybe cleaning version or even before, what's their data made of to take the right decision. Maybe they will talk to a certain department, maybe they will delete some stuff supposed to be there. It's really different, but at least they know. It's like I like to take the analogy of changing a house. You want to inventory everything first before you start packing everything, and it's an opportunity to make space, basically. Any
Perfect.
final words, Yatindra?
I know I completely echo what you say, Jeff, and I think moving house is a great analogy. But I think the cleanup and this, I think if you have dedicated people around this, it helps because it kind of eases that burden as well. So that's the only addition I'd make on it.
So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to send a big thank you to you again, Jeff and Yatindra, for taking time out to carry out this webinar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for organizing and inviting us. Thank you so much.
Amazing. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for all of you for joining us today, and hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.